Good day and welcome to paper 2 revision lesson. Uh, we'll be writing paper 2, which the content is rural and urban settlements, economic geography of South Africa, and map work. Let's see what will be the questions in question 1. Actually, before we go to the questions, let's look at the subtopics that you are going to be assessed on. Number 1, you'll be assessed on definitions for settlement, site, situation. So you must be able to define settlement. We know a settlement is a place where people live. It is a place where people live, place where people live. So that is the definition. You don't have to complicate it. Keep it as simple as that. And a site is an exact piece of land occupied by a settlement. Exact piece of land where a settlement is found. So that is a definition for a site. Exact piece of land occupied by a settlement, or you can simply say an exact piece of land where a settlement is located or is found. And then we're talking about the situation. What is a situation? A situation simply refers to a position of a settlement in relation to the broader environment. Position of a settlement in relation to the surrounding. So for an example, if I say a settlement is found at the bottom of the valley, I'm giving the situation there of, I'm saying it's situated on top of the valley, which means on top of the mountain. It means you have to go to the mountain first. So I'm giving you a situation of that particular settlement. Then we're going to be looking at classification of settlements. Settlements can be classified in a number of ways. Number 1, it can be classified as according to size and complexity. So when you're looking at the settlement, from the smallest to the largest. So size and complexity, you ranking settlement. So this is sometimes called hierarchy. This is sometimes called hierarchy. It is the classification of settlement from the smallest to the largest. So that is size and complexity. You can classify settlement according to pattern. You can classify settlement according to function. So what is a pattern of settlement? So by pattern, we're simply looking at the buildings. Are they closer to each other or are they far from each other? So we're saying a pattern is nucleated when the buildings are closer to each other, or it is dispersed when buildings are far from each other. Here examples will be either nucleated or dispersed. So this is classification of settlement according to pattern. Then you can also look at settlements in terms of their function. So what is a function of a settlement? Function simply refers to the what? Dominant economic activity. It refers to the dominant economic activity. Dominant economic activity. So we'll look at what is the function of a settlement, and then we classify settlement as rural or urban. So if a question says settlement is rural or is urban, and then the classification, is it according to size, is it according to pattern, or is it according to function? You must know the settlement is called rural, not because of its size, not because of the pattern, but because of the function. What is function? Dominant economic activities. What are people doing in that particular settlement to earn living? Then going to look at how site and situation affect the location of rural settlements, and then classification of rural settlements according to pattern, identification of different patterns, advantages and disadvantages of different patterns, function, identification. So these are all characteristics that we're going to be looking at. Then from there, we're going to look at shapes of rural settlements. We have the round shape, we have a linear shape, we have a cross shape, and we have a T shape. You must be able to also identify land use. So you must note that in rural area, we do not have land use zones, but we have land uses. So we have land use zones in urban area, but in rural area, we only have land use. Then we're going to look at rural urban migration. You must be able to define what rural urban migration. You must be able to state, is it a push factor or a pull factor? We must be able to explain the causes and the consequences of rural urban migration, which result in rural depopulation. So what is rural depopulation? Strategies to address rural depopulation, social justice issues. So when you speak of social justice issues, you can also say it's called injustice. So simply by justice, we're referring to fairness. By injustice, we're referring to unfairness. So we're going to look at social justice. So when you speak of social justice, it's unfair treatment. Then when you speak of social injustice, you're talking about unfair treatment. Then we're going to look at the land reform. And then what is land reform? Remember, land reform refers to all the policies that are addressing the injustices of apartheid. Number one, we are going to look at land tenure. What is land tenure? What is land redistribution? And what is land restitution? And then we're going to look at development, origin and development of urban areas, urbanization, and the important concepts. Your urbanization. What is urbanization? So you must be able to define a concept urbanization. Urbanization is when the percentage of urban area increases. Percentage. It is urbanization. When the percentage or proportion of people living in urban area increase. And then we need to look at urban growth. Now, what is urban growth? This one is referring to percentage. This one is referring to the number. So urban growth refers to the increase in the number. So both urbanization, urban growth. So this one refers to the number increases. Urban growth refers to the increase in number. And then we have urban expansion. What is expansion? This one refers to now the physical growth. What is physical growth? Now we have many people coming in. When many people come in, we are going to have what we call urban growth. It's an increase in number. So when number of people increases, it means their needs are going to increase as well. So we are going to have to, we're going to need more schools, more houses, more shops, more industries. So as we build more infrastructure, that is what we call urban expansion. It is a physical growth of the urban area. And then urban growth is the increase in number. Then we have urban sprawl. So urban sprawl is an uncontrolled growth of urban area or uncontrolled expansion of urban area. We call that urban sprawl. Then we have rate of urbanization. Rate of urbanization. So what is rate of urbanization? It simply refers to the speed at which urbanization is taking place. Speed at which urbanization is taking place. So when we're looking at the rate of urbanization, we can say the rate of urbanization is slow or fast. So what is happening in poor countries? Because of poor conditions, many people are rushing out of rural areas to urban areas because of poor living conditions. So the rate of urbanization in the poor countries is high. But when you're looking at rich countries, the quality of life in rural area is not so bad. So not many people are trying to move out of rural areas rather. So the rate is low. So then we talk about level of urbanization. Level of urbanization simply refer to the percentage of urbanization. It refers to the actual percentage of urbanization that has taken place. So we can have a high level of urbanization. If we have two countries, one country has 70% of the population living in urban areas, and another country has 30% of people living in urban areas. So we can say here the level, we can say here the level of urbanization is high, and you can say here the level of urbanization is low. Then we have counter urbanization. Urbanization comes with a lot of challenges. Once there's a lot of people living in urban areas, what happens? There's traffic congestion, there is shortage of resources, there is increase in crime, there is overcrowding, there's a number of problems. So because of the problems that are experienced, people start to move out of urban areas and settle back into rural areas. So what do you call that? We call that counter urbanization. It's when people settle back into rural areas, moving from urban areas back to rural areas. We call that process counter urbanization. Then we're going to look at all those processes, urban structure and patterns. We're going to look at this. This is a simple outline of the content that you're going to look at. I want to quickly move out of this and go into our content. Now, let's look at our content. This and move away from this outline. We're going to look at models of urban structure. So this is still outline. This is still outline. I want to now look at the classification of settlement. What is classification of settlement? Settlement can be classified according to a number of ways. We said in the introduction, we classify settlements here now according to size and complexity. So what are we looking at here? We're looking at the settlements from the smallest to the largest. What is the smallest form of settlement? Is an isolated farmstead. And what is the largest form of settlement? Is a megalopolis. So this is classification of settlements according to size and complexity. So a single farmstead will be a farmer's house and all the land used in his particular farm and the building. So it is a farmstead. So it has fewer things. It is very simple. But when you go to megalopolis is complex. It has got more functions, got high order services and low order services. So this is classification of settlement according to size and complexity. So it ranges from the small to the largest. And as you also look at them, you can further classify them and say the three smallest forms of settlement, which is isolated farmstead, hamlet, village. These are considered to be rural. But once you say a settlement is rural, you must know you are classifying that particular settlement in terms of its function. And then when you're looking at the settlements from urban, from town to megalopolis, then you are classifying settlements according to when you say from town to megalopolis, these are settlements which are considered to be urban. So you must know the difference between urban settlement and rural settlement. So that is where the function of a settlement comes. So this is classification of settlements from the smallest to the largest. It is also called hierarchy of settlements, where you rank settlements from the smallest to the largest. Now let's look at settlements according to functions. Now we have two types of settlement according to function. We call them rural or we call them urban. What do we mean when we say settlement is rural? You mean a settlement is single functional. It means it has one dominant economic activity. It's rural, one dominant, single functional. And when we say a settlement is rural, it means now the people here are either doing farming, they are doing fishing, they are doing forestry, they are doing mining. So by primary activity is simply referring to extraction of raw material. It's simply extraction of raw material. So this is primary activity, extraction of raw material. And then when you say settlement is urban, it means now settlement is multifunctional. Settlement, we say settlement is urban. Once we say it's urban, it is multifunctional. My slide is giving me a problem here. When we say settlements are urban, it means those settlements are multifunctional. So your urban settlements have got two types of activity: secondary activities and tertiary activities. So what is tertiary activities? This is services, and secondary is manufacturing. So this is classification of settlements according to function. This is classification of settlement according to function. And then we have settlements according to pattern. Now, when we classify settlements according to pattern, what is classification of settlements according to pattern? We are saying, are the buildings closer to each other, or are the buildings far from each other? So that is a pattern. Classification of settlements according to pattern. Are the buildings closer to each other, or are the buildings far from each other? So that is a simple classification of settlements according to pattern. Now, what do we have? We have nucleated pattern, we have dispersed pattern. Both settlements have got advantages and disadvantages. Now, what are the advantages of being closer to your neighbor? Number one, in these rural settlements, the dwellers, the rural settlements, the people that live here, they can share the cost. Suppose they want to buy a machine for farming, they can say, let's contribute this much, and they buy a machine. Again, because we are closer to a neighbor, the help is always available. And then because you are closer to people, there is high social interaction. You are not going to be bored. You have somebody to talk to if you need something, if you just, or you don't need something, you just want to talk. But what are the disadvantages? Because people are so close to each other, it means each individual, you can compare here the land around this house, and you can compare the land around this house. So the problem with nucleated pattern, because the houses are so close to each other, there is small land, or the land is fragmented. And then because they are close to each other, there is no privacy, no individual decision making. If somebody say, let's plant spinach, it means it's going to be spinach that is planted. If they say let's plant maize, it means it's maize that's going to be planted. So there's no individual decision making here. After you have contributed, we said the benefit, the advantage is that you can share costs. But as much as you share cost, it means when the profit comes, you must also share profit. And then mechanization is not easy. Why is mechanization not easy? Because of the small land, because of the small piece of land that farming is done here. So when you're looking at these advantages and disadvantages, you must be able to differentiate them, because the examination question can be very specific. You must also be able to differentiate this, or categorize the advantages and disadvantages of these patterns in terms of, are they social or are they economic? Are they social or are they economic? So you can look at this one here. It says advantage, share costs. So this will be economic advantage. And then here it says help is available. So this one is showing that it is social advantage, high social interaction. So this one is also showing what is that? It is also showing a social advantage because we're saying social interaction. And now let's look at the disadvantages. It says land is fragmented, small land. It is also, you can also say because of small land, there is going to be a small yield. Because of small land, you can say there's going to be, because of small land, there's going to be small yield, which means the production will be less. Now, if the production is less, that's going to affect the economy, your income, because you have less products, you're going to sell fewer products, and therefore you're going to make less money. Now, you can change this. As it is fragmented or small land, it becomes social. But you can change the social and make it economic by explaining it further. No privacy. So that one is outright social. No individual decision making. That is outright social. Share the profit. It is now economic because now it's talking about the profit, which is money. Mechanization is not easy. It is social, but you can also add to it to make it economic and say mechanization is not easy and therefore you are going to produce less, and with less production there's going to be less profit. So it's very important when you read this when you study this to read the question that will come from examination, because the questions in geography will not come as general and say advantages like you did in paper 1. The question was looking for environmental impact. Here now you must know what we're talking about here. We're talking about social impact, which means how does it affect people. Environmental impact, it means how does it affect environment. Or economic impact, how does it impact on the flow of money. Now, let's look at the dispersed pattern. What are the advantages of dispersed pattern? It means you can make own decisions. So that is social. Now, you can also add that economic to that social. And then you can make own decision and increase on your profit. So economic is found in all answers. If the answer is social or environment, you can always add something to it for it to be economic factor. Now, doesn't share profit. So that one, it is outright. That one, it is outright economic. And privacy, there is privacy, so it is outright social. And then we have large land. So large land is very social. An individual has large land. Now, you can use large land as well to make large land to be economic. There is large land, so there's going to be more production. And with more production, you're going to have more income or more profit. So when it comes to economic, all factors can be changed to be made economic. And then what are the disadvantages? Disadvantages, you carry your own cost. So carry own cost is outright economic. Unsafe, it is very social. Long distance for goods and services, this is social. Now, this social, you can also make it economic. Long distance for goods and services, and therefore you spend more money traveling or more petrol traveling, which affects your money. Limited social interaction or boredom, that one becomes outright social. So it is very important that you must know that when it comes to economic, you can build from any fact. But if the question wants you to give economic impact and you did not include how does that affect the money or profit, you must know that answer is incomplete. You must show how money will be affected or the income. Now, let's look at the factors that influence a settlement. Number one, factors that influence the site is water, people will settle closer to where water is. It is, remember, we're talking about rural settlements here. So water was going to be good for farming. People are also going to need fertile soil. They're going to need fuel, which is the trees that can be cut in order to make fire. They can also need building material is also going to be coming from the trees that can be cut, the grass that can be used for roofing. And then also we look at the direction to which the slope is facing, which is called the slope aspect. People in the southern hemisphere will settle mostly on the north facing slopes because the north facing slopes receive direct sun rays and therefore they are warmer and people can save on heating, on electricity, because they don't have to switch on their heaters forever because the houses will be warmed naturally. And then another factor will be the hilltop for defensive settlement. So remember, we're talking about rural settlements and we're talking historically here. So people back in the days will settle on high-lying areas so that they could see an enemy from a distance and they could respond accordingly. So you can see water here as a factor showing the choice of site. People will always be closer to water. You can see the river there. And then you can see again the flat land that people are choosing here where they can use it for farming. And then there is a place for meeting. There's good grass for number of things. Number one can be for cattle farming. Number two, it can also be for building material as well. Now let's look at shapes of settlements. Shapes of settlements. Now we have three shapes that we are looking at. So we have a round shape. You should be able to answer this question. Identify the shape. You must be state that it is round shape, and then there should be a focal point. There should be something of interest here. It can be a river, it can be a house, it can be a church, it can be a mosque, it can be something around it. And then crossroad shape is going to develop because of many intersections there, and then it can be a linear. Now, when it comes to this linear, sometimes an examiner can ask you, what is the natural feature that influence the shape of a settlement A or settlement B or C or X? So you must know the natural feature could be a river, or a natural feature could be it was along a mountain. It could be that, or now a man-made factor. So you must also be able to answer application questions that you get from your examination. Now, let's look at this concept of rural-urban migration. What is rural-urban migration? Rural-urban migration simply refers to the movement of people from rural to urban areas. It's the movement of people from rural areas to urban areas. So we call that process rural-urban migration, and it occurs because of push factor or pull factor. So in your examination, sometimes you have to give pull factors or push factors, but the examiner will not say to you, list push factor when you are in grade 12. They are not saying list push factor when you're in grade 12. The examiner will say, what were the factors that made people to leave rural areas? So if the question says, what factors make you to leave, you must know it is a push factor. You cannot say it's because they are looking for job opportunities. Job opportunities is not a push factor. Lack of job opportunities is a push factor. So you must be careful when you're reading your question. So a question in grade 12, it can be disguised. So you must read a question thoroughly before, or when the question says, why did people move into area A? Then area A is urban settlement. Why did people move in area A that were moving from area B? You must know. It says moving in. So the answer that you must give must be a pull factor. It must be a pull factor. But when the question says, why did people move out of A? You must know we are looking for push factor. So you must be careful, read your questions carefully and see what is the examiner looking out for you. Or sometimes if the examiner is very generous, the examiner can ask you what were the push factors. But it is less likely to happen that you get a question that says push factors. We give push factors in grade 10 and we give push factors in grade 9. What are the push factors for them to get used to the concept of push factor? Now in grade 12, the question is structured in such a way that you apply the knowledge that you have acquired over a period of time. So don't expect a question saying what are the push factors, because so many times learners write the leave examination, you think, oh, I have nailed it, because you saw that the questions were very practical. They are actually practical, not necessarily easy for you to answer, but they are very practical. They're talking about things that you already know. So it is very important that you become aware. You become aware of what the question wants. Push factor. Because it is so heartbreaking when you see that a learner in grade 12 has failed a question on a pull factor or a push factor, which we think it must be a given. All learners should get that. So push factors will be mechanization. Once farmers start to use a lot of machinery, it means they need fewer workers, and therefore people are going to have lack of jobs, low salaries, droughts, crime, unemployment. So again, when it comes to assessment, we're talking about rural-urban migration. See, I'm spending time on rural-urban migration, which so many people will think is an easier thing, but learners don't always get good marks here because of the interpretation of the questions. So sometimes here, the examiner could ask you about natural factors or physical factors that made people to leave, or they can ask you about social factors that make people to leave. You must be careful. Settlement geography is not the easy topic, but it is the practical topic. So what is important is to use the language correctly. So you must know, is the language used correctly? You'll get the marks. So sometimes they ask you economic factors that attracted people, or economic conditions, economic factors that drove people out. You must know if it's economic, it will be less or lack of money, something that in that way, or lack of profit, something like that. So you must be careful when you answer those kind of questions. Okay, let's move on. I'm still here. Now, your pull factors will be, it must have description. Here, remember now I am doing slides. Slides must be just short. Better job opportunities. You cannot just say salaries, because people here also have salaries. So it must be better salaries. It must not be education, because there is education in rural areas, but the standard of education is poor. So here you must not say education as well. You must say better standard or higher standard of education. You cannot say medical facilities. You can say better or improved medical facilities, and then bright lights. So availability of bright lights. So you must give a description to whatever, and so many times you cannot just give one factor, or they left because of electricity. You cannot say they left because of electricity. They left because of no electricity. They came because of the availability of electricity. So it cannot just be one weight. That weight must be described for it to become push factor or for it to become a pull factor. So what will be now the consequences once people move out of rural areas. What's going to happen now? This again, you must be careful when you answer these questions. The examiner could say the economic impact of rural urban migration, the economic impact of rural urban migration, or it can be social impacts of rural urban migration. So for rural areas, it can say the for rural areas. Number one, what we know, because of rural urban migration, people have moved out of rural areas. So the first thing, before we even look at empty farmhouses, we are going to have what we call we are going to have depopulation. The population. Number one, we're going to have the population, which means now the number of people is going to decrease that live there. So that will become social. There's going to be empty farmhouses. The crime or farm matters may increase. There's going to be unemployment. So what are we looking at here? Now we're looking at the cycle of rural decay. We look at the cycle of poverty. People moved because they were unemployed. And then some of the people that moved out were employers. Let's say it's a shop owner. He has a small shop that he has hired few people there, but because the people are no longer buying, he does not make enough profit. So he chooses to close his shop and move out. Now you see there is going to be now a rippling effect. People is going to move out. Now it's going to result in unemployment. Now, once now the investors see that most of the skillful people have moved out, they will not invest there. So there's going to be few investment in rural areas. Many old people will remain behind because they are on pension. They will not go to rural area. So it's going to result in an imbalance in the age and sex structure of rural settlements. There's going to be more elderly people and more younger people, and then there's going to be more females left behind than males, because males are usually the ones that will be trying to go and provide for the families. So there's going to be an imbalance in the age and sex structure of rural areas, which in reverse will also break the family bonds, because now the partners have left and the other partners are left alone. There's going to be few young men that are left behind because most of the young men will be going to urban areas to go and work. Low value of properties because now there's no demand for those particular properties. Shops will close down, that results in unemployment. The schools will be empty and some schools will be merging because now there's fewer learners. Services will be below standards because now the municipalities are not going to spend more money. They will decrease the budget because the budget is going to be according to the number of people that must be served. So if we have fewer people, then we're going to have less a budget for rural areas. Now, what are sustainable strategies that can be done in order to keep people in rural areas? We can advertise rural towns so that more investors can go there and invest and create more jobs. And once people have got more jobs, they don't have a need to move out. And then can develop recreational areas in rural areas like your stadia and all other recreational facilities that could be attractive to young people and that could create jobs. You can do tourism, especially ecotourism, because rural settlements are known for their wildlife and beautiful environment. So there can be tourist attractions that attract people to rural areas and therefore creating more jobs and attracting people back to rural areas. And the buildings that have been dilapidated and being run down, they can be restored and be used or repurposed for to attract people. And rural schools can be improved at interesting curriculum in rural areas, add IT technology into rural areas so that people can see the need to stay in rural areas, because the type of education that they will get in urban areas will be the same as the type of education that they get in rural areas. And then cheap industrial science. So what must happen there is the government can also provide incentives. The government can provide incentives for people to settle in rural areas, so that to build investment or to do investment. For example, if a person wants to build industry, the government can give them a site for cheaper, and then at a cheaper rates, so that they can go there and build industries and attract more people there and create jobs and resuscitate the rural areas. Now, we're looking at land reform. What is land reform? Land reform simply refers to the policies. Land reform is simply referring to policies. When we speak of land reform, we are simply referring to policies. What are these policies doing? They are addressing the injustices of apartheid. Land reform simply refers to the policies that address or redress the injustices of apartheid. That is what land reform is the policies that redress the injustices of apartheid law, or of apartheid. Don't make it too long. Just say policies that redress the injustices. Now, these policies, number one, we have the one policy that is called land restitution. One policy that is called land restitution. To restitution comes from the word reinstate. Restitution simply comes from the word reinstate. So what is land restitution? Giving land back to owners or compensating them. Giving land back to the owners or compensating them. So compensation can either be you give them another land to settle in, or you give them money to buy land. So that is, or you give their land back. So land restitution, giving land to people, giving land back to people. That is land restitution, or compensating them. You can compensate them by giving them money, or you give them alternative land. And the second policy here is land redistribution. Land redistribution. So during apartheid, land was distributed. During apartheid, land was distributed, but it was unfairly distributed. So what is happening now with land redistribution? People are given opportunity to own land. People that never owned land are given an opportunity to own land. So government buys land and makes it available to the previously disadvantaged people. I'm saying land was distributed during apartheid, but it was unfairly distributed. So when land is redistributed, it means the people that were not given land before have an opportunity to own land. Then we have land tenure reform. Land tenure reform. So what is land tenure reform? So land tenure reform simply refers to securing the rights of those living on land owned by others. To secure the rights of those living on land owned by others, the land that is not theirs. Like for example, if a person is renting out a house, you cannot send them out once you don't want them anymore there. You must give them time to get a land. So that is what you call land tenure. So, is to secure the rights to occupy. Even if the land is not yours, you are protected from using that particular land. So is to secure the rights of those living on land owned by other, so that people cannot be unfairly removed from the land. Even if it is not theirs, they can be given an alternative land. So you have your restitution, giving land back; redistribution, giving land to the landless; and land tenure, protecting the rights of people to use the land, even if it's not theirs. And then factors that going to be, let's look at these factors that are going to be influencing the location of urban areas. Now it is fresh water, underlying rock, relief, drainage, aspect of slope, resources, transport routes, bridging points, rivers, harbors, defensibility, and building material. So this will be the factors that will also influence the urban settlements. Now, urban settlements, we've got types of urban settlements. Number one, we've got what you call central place. So what is a central place? You must be able to define what a central place is. A town that provides, or it's an urban area that provides goods and services to the surrounding. So you have a town here, then around this town, this is rural, and this is urban. So what do people do? People get their, this is the urban settlement. This one here in the middle, it is the urban settlements, and then it is surrounded by rural settlements. So when people want to get urban functions, remember we said urban settlement has got secondary and tertiary. Is a settlement where people are involved in secondary and tertiary activities. Urban settlements are settlements where people are involved in secondary and tertiary activities. And what are secondary activities? It is manufacturing of goods. And what are tertiary activities? It is provision of services. So people in rural areas are doing primary activities, which means people in rural areas will not have finished products and then will not be having services. So for them to get educational services, to get health services, what do? They have to move to a place called a central place town to go and receive secondary and tertiary goods and services. Because in rural areas, according to the definition, rural areas is unifunctional, so people are involved in primary activities. So it means they do not have secondary activities and they do not have tertiary activities. So where must they go for secondary and tertiary activities? To go and get goods, to go and receive services. They must now move to where? They must move to urban settlements. So a central place is a town or area, urban settlement that provides goods and services to the surrounding rural area. Or you can simply say it provides urban functions. What are urban functions? Urban functions is secondary functions and tertiary functions. Then we have other types of town. And now, okay, let's go look at back into central places. Under central places, we have what we call low order goods and services. Low order goods and services. So what are low order goods? Low order goods simply refer to daily needs. Low order goods simply refer to your daily needs. These are the products that you need on daily basis. So they have small threshold population and they have several shops or services. And then this is the goods that you don't travel longer distance. So low order goods are the goods that you use daily, and therefore because not use daily but buy daily, because you can have a car, and a car is not a low order goods. A car is a high order good, but you can be using your car every day. So high order goods, low order goods are not the goods that you use every day. You can have a good that you use every day, but it's a high order good. So it's not a question of using, it's a question of using. It's not a question of using, but it's a question of buying. You can use a high order goods on daily basis, but you buy it once in a while. So, and then we have high order goods, which are the daily goods, your bread, your butter, all the things, milk, all those things that you use on regular basis will be your low order goods. So you travel a shorter distance for them. Then you have high order goods and services. You don't buy them regularly. You don't buy them regularly. They are specialized goods. So These goods, usually you travel longer distance for them. You travel longer distance for them because they are more specialized. So we have what we call um, high order goods and high order services. So a good is a product that you are going to bring home, and a service is something that you are going to use wherever you go. So, for an example, if I have a headache because I was on the sun for a long time, playing football or playing rugby, all what I need is maybe Panado or something because of that. But if I have a headache that is not stopping, I can travel longer distance for that headache because now it needs a specialist. Now it becomes now a high order service that I need. Uh, you need high order goods. You buy them less often. They have larger threshold population, and there are less shops that provide them. For example, we have fewer shopping centers than spaza shops. We've got a lot of spaza shops because spaza shops are low order centers, and therefore they provide low order services, and therefore there's more of them. But when it comes to shopping centers, we have fewer shopping centers because those are high order centers. And again, you can look at the high school. You can look at the high school. A high school will be a low order center compared to a university. A university is a high order center because a high order center is going to have a larger threshold population. Larger threshold population, which means it's going to attract more people. So uh, your school is going to be a low order center because the school is going to attract fewer learners compared to universities. Now, let's look at what we call type of settlements. So it was first central place. So under central place, you must check what we're talking about here. We're talking about order of goods and services, and then we're also talking about range. Okay, we look at all those other uh, uh, definitions or all those other concepts. Let's continue with types of transport. Types of settlements here. We have what we call trade and transport towns or cities. So, what are trade of transport? They are examples of trade and transport. Number one, we have break of bulk. So, when you go to the coast, actually, all of your coastal towns will be trade bulk of a break of bulk will be the break of bulk in such a way that products will be coming in by water transport and will be loaded onto the road transport or be loaded into the rail transport. So that makes it break of bulk point. So you're looking at Cape Town, you're looking at Durban, you're looking at all coastal areas where one mode of transport is replaced by another. So break of bulk point simply refers to where one mode of transport is replaced by another. We call it a break of bulk point. And then we have junction. So junction towns are simply towns that are found at main intersections. They are found at main intersections. We call them junction towns. Then we have gap towns. What are gap towns? Gap towns are towns that are found at the point of access at physical barrier. If we have a mountain and there's a gap through the mountain, we have a mountain and we have a gap through the mountain. So that is a town that is called a gap town. And then we have what we call specialized towns. So there are many towns developed because of number of factors. Number one, we have mining towns like Velkom. It's a mining town. It developed mainly because of mine. And then you can also look at Johannesburg. Johannesburg, its origin, that is why it's called Gauteng, a place of gold. It mainly developed because of gold mining, but it has since developed, and now it is a commercial town which does many businesses. And then we have specialized town like Stellenbosch, where it is developed because of the institutions there. There's a lot of institutions and Stellenbosch University there at Stellenbosch. And we have industrial town. Now, Secunda is an example of industrial town. The area is highly industrialized. Then we have a town like Margate in KZN. It is a resort town. So this town specializes mainly on resorts. So it is another type of a resort of a specialized town. It's a resort town. And then we're looking at an area like Soweto. Soweto is a place where many people are working, are staying there, but they don't work in a particular area. In the morning, they will be going to different places. They'll be going to all areas around Gauteng. So from Pretoria to Vaal to Krugersdorp to wherever. So it becomes a commuter town. So it is where most of the people will be using different transport network to go to their working space. So that is what we call. And in the afternoon, they will be coming back to their homes. So that is what we call a commuter town. So it is a specialized town. Now, let's look at urban hierarchy that comes from central place town. You say, what is a central place town? It's a town that provides urban functions to the surrounding rural area. It's a town that provides urban functions to the surrounding rural area. And then we have what we call urban hierarchy. Urban hierarchy. So what we have here, this is what we call urban hierarchy. Is the ranking of settlements from the smallest to the largest. Urban hierarchy simply refers to the ranking of settlements according to size, or you can say is a ranking of settlements from smallest to largest. And then we said a central place town is a provider that provides goods and services to the surrounding rural area. And then we have sphere of influence. What is a sphere of influence? The area served by a central place. So if you have a town here, so this is a city boundary. This is city boundary. This is city boundary. And now, all this area around the city, all this area around the city, it is what we call the sphere of influence. That is where the business is going to get customers from. For example, you can look at your school. Your school as a business. What is the sphere of influence for your school? The sphere of influence for your school will be the community where you're coming from. That is the sphere of influence. And now, because the school is a law order center, the school will now have a smaller sphere of influence. It will have a smaller sphere of influence. Then we have what we call threshold population. What is threshold population? It refers to the number of people required to make business profitable. So for the school to function, it takes the learners from that surrounding area. So those learners become now the threshold population of a particular school. So this is simply the number of people a function must serve to be profitable, or the number of people required to make business profitable. So that is threshold population. And now, if you are in a place and you want to go somewhere else to go and buy goods, the distance that you are going to travel is called a range. So a range simply refers to the maximum distance a customer is prepared to travel for goods or for services. So what is going to determine the range? The distance that you're going to travel. What are you going to consider for you to start traveling? You're going to consider, am I going for high order goods or am I going for low order goods? What are high order goods? Those are specialized goods. So if I want to go and buy a car, I can travel longer distance to go and buy a car if a car is cheaper at that particular place. But if I want to go and buy bread, it's going to be expensive for me if I'm going to buy bread from far distance, because I am also going to travel that distance again the following day, because it's a product that is bought frequently. So the low order goods have got a smaller range. The low order goods have got a smaller range than high order goods, because they are more expensive. And then the low order goods, are not more expensive, they are cheaper. So the range of goods is determined by the order of goods, and the range of services is determined by the order of services. If I need a specialist, I can travel longer distance to go and see a specialist. But for a regular service, I don't need to travel longer distance because it is not specialized. Now, let's look at map application. Let's look at the map application on settlement geography. So what we have jumped here, we have jumped quickly to street patterns here. We have jumped quickly to street patterns. So when you're speaking of street patterns here, we are simply looking at what we call urban morphology. We have quickly we're looking at what we call urban morphology. There was a change in the slides. Unfortunately, let's quickly go through the slide. So what are we looking at here? We're looking at what we call urban morphology. We're looking at urban morphology. So many times people get confused between urban morphology and what we call urban profile, urban morphology and urban profile. So what we're looking here is urban morphology, which is the internal structure of urban area. So what are we looking at here? We're looking at street patterns. Number one, we're looking at grid pattern. So the grid pattern, this is the grid pattern, the grid iron pattern. So the grid iron pattern is a characteristics of an older settlement. It's a characteristics of an older settlement. How do you tell it's an older settlement? You can see there's a monument here. You can see there's a monument here. It's showing you that it is older. You can see again, there's a museum here. So if you are looking at this pattern here and the pattern here, then the question is, which one is older? This one should be older because it's got the old pattern. Now, this one, the irregular patterns, these are the irregular patterns. The irregular patterns are the newest kind of patterns. These are the newest kind of patterns. What you should know again is that the grid pattern, what are the advantages and the disadvantages? It's so easy to lay out. This pattern is so easy to lay out, and then it's easy to find your way here. That will be the advantage of the grid iron pattern. It's easy to lay out and it's easy, sorry, left quickly there. It's easy to lay out, then it's easy to find your direction here. And it is found on the older part of the city, which were flat, Now, remember, during building, when people start to occupy the land, they are going to start building on a flatter land first, and the steeper land will be left. So you can see here, you can see a lot of contour lines here. You can see a lot of contour lines in this area over here because the area here is relatively flat. But now, when you're looking at this area, you can see there's a lot of contour lines here. You can see there's a lot of contour lines here. You can see the lot of contour lines. So to show that the area is not gentle, you see there's a lot of contour lines. So this is the gray area. When you're looking at the gray area on the map is indicating, urban settlements or urban development. The gray area in urban on the map, on the topographical map, they indicate urban developments. Those developments can be towns, they can be residential area. So all this area here, this is your irregular pattern. This irregular pattern. You can also see there are contour lines here. So to show that this urban development was made after this because this was the flat land. And then after the flat land was taken, now this development followed after that. So now you can look at the factors that might have influenced the choice of site here. Flatland, number one, there's availability of water, which is the factors that we were looking at, factors that influence the choice of site. And now you have this over here. This is what we call recreation to indicate that this is urban area. And then when you look again on your map, you have these dark colors. These dark colors on your key or on your reference, they will indicate buildings. They will indicate buildings on the key. So these dark colors, they could be number of things. Number one, they could be a mall. Like you see here, you have W there, W for vehicle. It could be a shop here. You have S here, which is a school. You have another S here, is a school. You have another S here, is a school, and you can see the school grounds there as a recreation. And then you have here, what do you have here? You have your railway. You have your railway there. You have your railway there. And then what do you have there? You also have buildings there. It could be your station. It could be some kind of buildings there. But these buildings also here, what do you have there? You have your hospital, but you have monument next to the hospital. So these black color things here, they are simply showing you, they are known as buildings. So these buildings can also be industries. They can also be industries. So you have this area over here. This area is representing, this area over here is representing urban area. Which part represent urban area? All the gray parts here represent urban area. And then this area where you have grid pattern, it represented the older part of the urban area. And this one with irregular pattern, they represent the newer part of urban area. And then this recreational facilities, this is what we call the land use in urban area. Because when you're looking at the recreational areas, they don't have a specific area at which they are found. They could locate anywhere. They could locate inside the around the buildings. They can be found in the middle. So you can see this recreation here. You can see this recreation here. It's just found in the middle of this gray area here. You can see this recreation here is found on the outskirt. You can see this one as well is found on the outskirt. You can see this one is found here in the middle. So recreation is not a land use zone because it's not found in a particular area, but it's found everywhere in the rural area. So what we have learned here is the map interpretation and map application. What can you identify from topographical map? Now, this one we have already spoken about, and then this is what we have been looking at here. So this is the land, this is the internal structure. This is the internal structure or urban morphology, but this is the urban morphology as identified from the topographical map. But now, in theory, when you're looking at this, you are going to see something like this. So this is a grid iron pattern. This is how grid iron pattern looks like on the topographical map. And this is irregular pattern, and this is how irregular pattern will look like on the map. So this is map application of the internal structure of the urban areas. Now, what are the advantages, or let's start first with the characteristics of grid iron pattern. We have main patterns, which is a grid iron or rectangular pattern, radial pattern, and irregular pattern. So what are the characteristics of these patterns? With grid iron, the road intersect at right angle. And then with radial, the roads radiates, they move away from the central point. And this one has got no clear structure. Like the name say, it is irregular. It does not follow a specific shape. And then what are the advantages of the grid iron pattern? I said it's easy to plan, land is divided easily, it is easy to find way. But with radial pattern, what are the advantages? Easy flow of traffic, all roads lead to the central point. So you know at any point you are going to get to the center when you travel along it. Now, what are the advantages of irregular pattern? Because of fewer intersections, it's going to allow for a traffic to flow. There's going to have fewer intersections, and it's going to accommodates topography. Like I was saying here, look at what is happening here. Here we have a lot of contour lines. We have a lot of contour lines to show that the area is not gentle, to show that the area is not gentle or the area is steeper. But here, the contour lines, we don't see a lot of contour lines here. The contour lines are far from each other. You can just see a single contour line here in the middle, and there aren't as many contour lines here. So it shows that it is gentle. So the advantage of this grid pattern is that, of this irregular pattern, that it can be on a steeper slopes, and it allow building to take place on a steeper gradients. But the disadvantage is that the disadvantage of this irregular pattern is that it is difficult to plan because of steep gradient, and it is easy for you to get lost because of the roads that are winding, and it's not easy to expand. It's not easy to expand or divide because the area is very steep. But the opposite will be correct there for 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 the grid iron. Grid iron, because it's gentle, it's easy to divide and construct. Now, what is the problem with traffic congestion? All these vehicles that are traveling on this route, they all have to stop at this point, from that point, from that point, and from that point. So you can see there's four-way stops. So it means now, at one stage, all four cars will have to stop here. So that's going to result in a very slow traffic movement, which results in traffic congestion. And then it is monotonous or it is boring. And because some people may not stop at the stop sign there, it might result in accident there. And then this one, because all roads are going into the center, is going to result in traffic. The correct word there is congestion, not jam. The correct word there, it will result in traffic congestion, not traffic jam. And because of the traffic is going to be moving very slow, and there's a lot of wasted space. The space is not used economically there. So this is the same slide as the one that we have explained there. Now, what are we looking at here? We're looking at what we call urban profile. So this is urban morphology. What is urban morphology? Is the internal structure of the city. So what is the internal structure of the city? We're looking at the street patterns. That is urban morphology. Then what are we looking at here? What are we looking at here? Now we're looking at the urban profile. Looking at the urban profile. So what is urban profile? Urban profile is the side view of the city. Is the side view of the city. And then what do we see from urban profile? We see that the buildings increase in height when you go towards the city center, and they decrease in height when you move away. And there is only one reason for that. The reason for the buildings increasing to the city center is because of the high land value. The land is expensive in the city center. The land is expensive in the city center. That is why the buildings are taller. You cannot buy large land. But when you're moving away from the city center, the land becomes cheaper. That is why you can buy a larger land and build horizontally and not vertically, because the land is cheaper there. Now, the land is very expensive in the city center. There is high competition in the city center. There is high density of buildings in the CBD. The buildings are built vertically. There are tall buildings there. Then there are more offices. And this is a commercial hub. The CBD is the commercial hub. But now, when you're moving away from the CBD, the land is cheaper. Because the land is cheaper, the buildings are going to be shorter, and there's going to be fewer houses because people can afford to be far from each other, because each person can buy their own land. And the buildings are not so high, they're not so tall, because they don't need to maximize the value of the land. So in the city center, they make a maximum use of the land by making the land to the houses or the buildings to be taller. And away from the city center, we find industries and you find residential. I don't think you have seen a double story of industry, unless that is a very light industry that makes clothes. You can have double story, but most of the industries will be single stories. Now, you know the difference between urban profile and urban the difference between urban profile and urban morphology. We said urban profile, it is the side view of the city. What does the urban profile show you? It shows you the height of the building and how the building's height change when you're moving from the city center to the periphery. And urban morphology simply refer to the internal structure of the urban areas. It shows different street patterns. And now we look at the land use zones, land use zones. So we spoke about land use in urban area, in rural areas. So it is a particular use of the land. But now in urban areas, talking about the land use zone, which means now it is a particular area that is used for a specific function. It's a particular area of an urban area that is used for a particular area. Number one, we have the CBD. We know the CBD is part of the commercial land use. So under commercial land use, we have two. We have CBD and we have OBD. What does CBD stands for? It stands for Central Business District. And then what does OBD stands for? It stands for Outlying Business District. So the CBD, that's your city center. What are the characteristics? It has the highest land value. It has the highest or the highest building density. It's got the tallest buildings. What do we mean by highest building density? It means there are many buildings. The buildings are very close to each other. So that is what we mean by highest building density. There are many buildings and the buildings are very close to each other in order to maximize the value of the land. You cannot have a lot of land that is not used profitably because the land is very expensive in the CBD. And it has got high concentration of shops and offices, and it has high order commercial functions. It's got both high order and low order commercial functions. And then what are the issues here? The issues are high rentals. The issues in urban in CBD is high level of pollution, high level of traffic congestion, and high levels of crime. Those are the issues that you find in the city center. And then these issues are the ones that we call centrifugal forces. These are the issues that we call centrifugal forces that are now going to result in what we call these are what are going to result in what we call outlying business district, outlying a business district. So what is happening here? We have what we call decentralization. We have what we call decentralization. Now, outlying business district, as in comparison to the CBD, they are found on the outskirts of the cities. They are not found in the city centers. And now, what are the characteristics? They are characterized by high land value because the land there is clean. There's a lot of vegetation that is absorbing carbon dioxide there. And then it is closer to transport routes for accessibility. It's got aesthetic appeal, which means it's beautiful. There is less traffic congestion because of decentralization, and it has sufficient parking space. Now, you can see here it is your outlying business district. So outlying business district are simply referring to your shopping centers. Your shopping centers, they are simply your outlying business district because they are built away from the city center. And then where are they built? They are built from away from the city center. So the examiner can ask you a question, the advantages of being in the outlying business district. You must know what are the advantages there. It has got an aesthetic appeal. It looks beautiful. It is highly accessible. There is less pollution there in terms of noise pollution. There is less air pollution there because of many trees that are absorbing uh, uh, carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. So that is why the urban areas I mean, not the urban areas. That is why the outlying business are more attractive to businesses than the CBD. And there is less traffic congestion there. There's ample of parking space in the outlying business district. Another land use can be used as a industrial land use. So industrial land use, we have two types of industries: light industries and heavy industries. What are light industries? They make small and light goods. And what are heavy industries? Industries that make heavy and bulky goods. So where are the light industries found? They are usually found outside the residential area or outside the CBD. So these are usually called market orientated. They are usually called market orientated. The light industries are usually called market orientated. Why do you call them market orientated? Because they are usually found closer to the residential area where there are customers, or they are found closer to CBD where there are shops, which are also customers. So these are your light industries. And then they also produce little noise. They create little air pollution. So they can be settled closer to where people live because they don't pose a lot of health risks to people. They don't use a lot of heavy machinery, so uh, 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 they are not too dangerous to where people live. But now we have the heavy industries. Heavy industries are usually found on the outskirts. Actually, their location, they must always be on the outskirts. This outskirts, this is where a place that we call rural urban fringe. They are usually found on places that we call rural urban fringe. So if you are to build a heavy industry, if you are to build a heavy industry, you will build it away from where people live. So if you are to build an industry, this will be the ideal place to build your heavy industry. It will be away, but now you cannot build it here because this area here is steep. The heavy industries need the heavy industries need flat and large land, but they need the availability of water, they need availability of flat land, availability of transport network. Okay, we'll look at when we're doing economic geography in few minutes time. They are usually found on the outskirts where the land is cheaper. They are found near major transport or bulky transport network to transport the goods to the market and to transport the raw material to the market. They are usually found on a flat land and also found near water sources. They also cause a lot of air pollution and they have dangerous activities. That is why the first thing that you do when you get to the heavy industry, if you want to do a tour in the heavy industry, the first thing that they will give you is a protective gear. They are going to give you helmet, they're going to give you overalls. So because of the dangerous activities that are involved in the heavy industry. Now we have another land use zone that we call a zone of decay or transition zone. So a transition zone is an area that you are going to find outside the CBD. Where is it found? Just outside the CBD. What you must know that it has mixed function. It has mixed function. What do you mean mixed functions? There is residential, there is commercial, and there's also light industries there. It is characterized by decayed buildings. Why are the decayed buildings there? Because there is no upkeep. The areas here, there's no people taking care of. It's usually characterized by buildings that have been hijacked, buildings that have been taken by other people, hijacked buildings where people are not paying for services and therefore also having dangerous activities taking place there. You can have a lot of social injustices. As you can see, there's graffiti there on the walls. You can see the rusted buildings there that is not well taken care of, but you can see at least it is clean. There's not so much of pollution there. But this is what we call transition zone or zone of decay. So this is where most of urban renewal take place. That is where most of the urban renewal, improvement of urban area must take place. And the land here is still valuable. Why is the land still valuable here? Because the land is closer to the CBD. And we said CBD has got the highest land value. But as much as the land value is high, the buildings are not taken care of here, which results in what we call urban blight. Uh, how is it managed? It is managed through renovation, renewal, and it has reduced housing density. Another land use that we have is land use zone. Not land use, it's a land use zone. The only land use in urban area is recreational. Others are land use zones because they can be found in a specific area. So another land use zones in urban area will be residential. And your residential, we have three types of residential. We have middle income, we have high income, and we have informal settlement. So middle income found away from the CBD, they've got good view. They've got large properties, good services, and there's also recreational. And then we have low income, which is closer to the CBD. Why is it closer to the CBD? Because we say it is low income. And then the people are working in the CBD so that people can save the cost of going to work. Houses are closer to each other. There's fewer facilities. There's poor services and there's smaller properties. And the properties they look more the same. So you could be asked to give characteristics of a low income or high income residential areas. And then we have informal settlement. Informal settlement also has got two characteristics. You can look at informal settlement in terms of a residential area. You can also look at informal settlement as an urban issue. It's also called an urban issue because informal settlements develop in urban areas mostly because people do not have an area or they don't have houses, and therefore they make a makeshift kind of buildings where they can stay. So it is a residential area. It is also considered to be urban issue. It is usually found on the outskirts. Houses are built of any available material. It can be plastic, wood, can be zinc, can be anything. It is characterized by unhealthy conditions. There are no service delivery. There's poverty. There's crime. Also, you can also look at the positive characteristics there because it is providing people a place to stay in. Now, another land use zone is what we call rural urban fringe. Land use zone is rural urban fringe. It is just found it is found between the rural areas and urban area. So what do you see here? You can see over here, you have your rural areas, and you can see here, you have your urban settlement. So this area between the rural areas and urban areas is called the rural urban fringe. So usually it is where you're going to find your heavy industries. Why are you going to find heavy industries there? Because of flat and cheaper land there. You're going to have flat and cheaper land there. You're going to find it again there because of availability of transport network there. You can see there's water availability there. That is where you're going to get your rural urban fringe. Also, you can see there's Bob Rogers Park there. You can see there's a park there. So this is where you will also find your sewage works there. You see there's a sewage work outside the CBD before the rural. So that area is called it's called a rural urban fringe. It is also a transition between rural area and urban area, but it's not a transitional zone. It is just a transition because now you are moving from the rural areas, you are getting into urban areas. And then, like your transitional zone or zone of decay, you are moving from the CBD, but you go into urban area. You are moving from the CBD, not to urban area. You are moving from the CBD of the urban area to residential or to the light industries. So you are transiting between what? Between the one land use to another. So the first land use would be commercial, which is CBD, and now you go into residential. So that is your transition zone. But this one is also a land of transition between rural settlements and urban settlements. So where is it found? It is found on the edge of urban area. It also has got the mixed functions. It also have got the mixed functions. What mixed functions? The mixed functions of urban areas and rural areas. It has got large properties because of cheaper land. Plots and small holdings are found there. Not the actual farms, but small holdings. It's plots. And this is where you find your airports, your cemeteries, your power station, your golf courses, and your sewer works as indicated in the slide here. Now, what do we have here? We're looking at a map interpretation. What are we looking at? We're looking at the type of settlement here. We're saying the buildings here are far from each other. And this is, so examination can say, identify the settlement pattern here. Is it nucleated or isolated? So you can say dispersed. Why do you say dispersed? Because the houses are far from each other. So you can see the houses are far from each other. Now, looking at the nucleated settlement, you see the houses here, they are closer to each other. So that's a nucleated settlement. So woodland and this Ramti, you see Ramti is an isolated settlement. And then Ramti has got isolated pattern, but woodland has got nucleated pattern. So this is an example of nucleated pattern here. Now, shape. Now you can see this settlement is built along the transport route here is going to take a linear shape. Then we're looking now at the land use zones. This is now your urban morphology. You can see this is the CBD. This is the older part of the city. This is the older part of the city. What do you see there? You see the street pattern that is grade iron there. And then what do you see there? You see transport network there to make it most accessible. So you have your green belts. So this is your rural urban fringe. So this is actually your map interpretation. Looking at the street patterns, grid iron patterns, which are the older part of the city, you're looking at the new one. And then the last thing that you have is your, before last thing, we have your models. You have your models. So we have number of models. Focus today, I'm looking at multiple nuclei. So what is the multiple nuclei? Multiple nuclei simply show us that the city center have got more than one central point. So we have more than one central point here. So that is the area of development. And we have another model here, which is called sector model. So what is this sector model indicating to us? Sector model is indicating that the city is built of different sectors, and all the sectors are radiating. It's showing that all the sectors are radiating from the central point. So what is the multiple nuclei showing us? It's showing us that the city has more than one center. What is a sector model showing us? It shows us the land use zones are simply sectors, and they all radiate from the one central point, which is the CBD. Then we have lastly the South African apartheid city. The South African apartheid city, what is this model showing us? It is simply showing that the South African cities were influenced by apartheid spatial planning and group act, whereby people would settle in certain places because of their skin color. So this one is showing that. And then we now have what we call urban issues. We have number one, urban issues, traffic congestion, urban decay, overcrowding. These are sometimes in the examination, you could be asked to identify an urban issue. So This could be an urban issue. This could be an urban issue that we have to identify, or this could be an urban issue. So what you need to do, you need to know the causes of those urban issues and how do they affect people and what are the possible solutions of those urban issues. And now informal settlement also can be called a residential area and can also be called an urban issue. And what are the people experiencing in those urban areas, in those informal settlements? Okay, there's a continuation of of the, of the map work that we looked at earlier. So